If you want to be a part of the conversation before it happens here on YouTube, click that link in the description to join the free Courtside Financial Discord. Hey everyone, my name's Obi and welcome back to the Courtside Financial Podcast, the podcast where we talk about business and technology. Specifically, we're going to be focusing on the greater EV industry with an emphasis on my favorite company. It doesn't have to be yours. It's good to do your own research and come to your own conclusions. NIO, we've got a special guest on today. You guys know him very well. He's been on several episodes on the podcast. So today's topic is just going to be basically having an open dialogue, open conversation about what we discussed in my last couple of episodes. We're going to go through those topics. You guys got my opinion already, but now it's going to be good to get Marty's as well. How are you doing, Marty?
Good afternoon. Happy Labor Day.
Good afternoon. Happy Labor Day. We're doing labor on Labor Day.
Oh, it's a good day.
It's a good day. It's a good day. So, Marty, are you excited to get into these topics and kind of get some content out for the viewers again?
Well, if we're specifically speaking about NEO, it's a very exciting week with Onvo being introduced, ER coming up. It's going to be a dynamic. It's going to be a dynamite ER. It's going to make Q1 look like Q1, and I think NEO Longs can be very excited because this is definitely a step up the ladder, and we'll see how Thursday goes.
But hey, I know you've got some questions for me. I've got some questions for you. So let's kick it off. First question that I have for you, I've got these written down, but with Xpeng's decision to move away from LiDAR and focus more on their AI Eagle Vision, something kind of similar to Tesla. How do you think this shift is going to impact like the broader EV market? And do you think Xpeng is making the right decision here in comparison to NIO, who has more of a comprehensive sensor fusion approach?
Um, as time goes by, of course, NEO has LiDAR. It's a step up, but the camera technology is moving quickly too. And for um, cost controls, these newer camera systems, I believe, are at least sufficient and maybe everything that they need for the time being. Xpeng has their autonomous system, which, by the way, is based on Tesla. They originally started with Tesla open source and have progressed into, well, as of lately, they've actually just have a tape out for their latest chip. They're going to have a chip out too. So the technology is moving quickly. Their new line, this new line of cars. Let's talk about it a little bit. What do you think about the pricing? What do you think about their pricing strategy?
So I think Xpeng releasing the MO3, is that what you're referring to, the $16,000 EV?
It starts there. I doubt many people will drive away with a $16,000 unit, but go ahead.
So there's a whole market that's actually booming in China that a lot of people aren't really aware of. And what they're referring to this market as is the micro EV market, right? So this market is kind of dominated by players like BYD who are making extremely cheap EVs. And there's also so many electric vehicle companies in China that we don't even know about, that people don't talk about, but these companies are pumping out cheap EVs, and there is a group of consumers who are looking to and ready to buy that
Of course.
particular vehicle. However, if Xpeng's goal, which they say it is to dominate on the global stage, I think that you're going to have a hard time, like you said earlier this week, bringing that type of vehicle into the US. The US does not want to allow that type of vehicle. But if it's being sold for $16,000 and the US adds tariffs, that might make it still an attractive price point to bring into America. But we don't tend to drive like smaller, cheaper cars here, right? They're generally not safe. And the way people drive in America, I wouldn't feel safe in that type of car. But I think the car will do well in China. I think it'll make EVs more accessible to a group of people who cannot afford these more expensive EVs like a NIO or like standard like Xpeng or Li Auto or Xiaomi. But I think it's a good decision. It's going to give them a little bit more scale. They got to do volume with this. It's not about selling one or a couple. It's about selling a lot of them to make it.
Right. Well, the the micro EVs, the Xpeng $16,000 model, those are right now exactly what the EU and the USA, Canada want to keep out. Okay,
Mhm.
because first of all, you really can't even buy a new car in the United States for $16,000 anywhere. So that's so for that vehicle to get into the US right now is impossible. But the strategy could be longer term. The strategy may be that Detroit, for lack of a better terminology, Detroit and Ontario, and Berlin are not going to build that car. Okay, so like you said, there's a market for that. Where's the market? The market's in urban areas. The market's for people that have very small parking spaces, don't drive high mileage, don't drive at high speeds. Like you were saying, you wouldn't feel safe in it. But if you're driving around a city under 30 miles an hour, you're more than safe in those cars. And a good point you bring up about safety is we don't know if any or all of those cars will pass National Transit Safety Association criteria. NIO, the larger NIOs are 5 stars in Europe, which makes them easily 5 star here. So I think staying with the subject of the price of that car, when those cars will finally do come in, it'll be after they settle up the tariff information. And what they will probably wind up being, they will come into North America and Europe with the different badge on.
Mhm.
They okay, and they will be just like the Spark that GM sold, and a Ford Fiesta, smaller cars that they have to have in the showroom. They have to have it in their lineup, and that's probably going to be the solution.
I agree with you. And to your point about quality, we just saw that in where was it? In somewhere in Asia. Mercedes-Benz, they had South Korea, my bad. Mercedes-Benz, they had a electric vehicle battery fire with their E-Series. I forget what specific model it was.
The police and the National Forensic Service are conducting a joint probe into the cause of the fire. The owner of the car that caught fire told investigators that the vehicle was parked 3 days ago.
충전한 것도 아니고 그냥 서 있는 상태에서 화재가 발생했다고.
In effect, the car had been idle for 59 hours and was not charging when it caught fire.
But the country has called for battery transparency. They've called for automakers to start releasing stats on their batteries, where the
Good
batteries
point.
are coming from, the battery supply chain. So if they're comfortable manufacturing and selling an EV for $16,000, how do we know that the quality is up to par? How do we know that the batteries are safe? How do we know that how can we ensure the safety of those vehicles just in general, not even like in the case of a car
Well,
accident? Not to trash Xpeng or anything, but that's a valid, genuine question.
that's why in every jurisdiction in the U.S., somebody goes out and tests the octane of fuel
Right.
that's going into your car. They make sure that a gallon is actually a gallon, that you're not
Right.
getting 3/4 of a gallon instead of a gallon. So those standards that apply for fossil fuels, common sense tells you that the batteries are going to have the same thing. Well, again, as you're going to hear me say this all the time, it does not matter how fast your battery charges. It's how long it's going to last because that's your investment. If you have a fixed battery, and that's never a problem if you happen to own a NIO or an Onvo, because you will always be getting the latest battery technology. It's not an advertisement. That's reality. You could have, I'm reading about, 5-minute charges and everything. That's great. Still attached to the car. That thing goes, your car's worth what it's worth. You damage it, your car's worth what it's worth.
So I live in Arizona now, you know this, but I used to live in Texas, like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, something like that. And
That's a big state.
yeah, every year when I lived in Texas, and you got to do this in Arizona too, but when I lived in Texas every year, I have to take my car to go get emissions tested, right? So someone commented on my channel a couple of days ago, and they said big news just came out of China. This was this week. Big news just came out of China. Starting in March 2025, they are going to start requiring every electric vehicle to get battery tested every year. So that's obviously going to present a huge advantage for NIO, who's already doing that with their swapping stations. I don't know if this news was true or not. I asked the person to link me. I searched for it on the internet. I couldn't find it. I could see it being true, but I didn't find anything on it. So what do you think of that? And
I mean, I've heard about it. I don't know enough about it to give any type of authoritative comment on it, but it makes sense. But there's definitely a method in madness. Uh, China China knows that eventually they know things that U.S. doesn't want to admit.
Mhm.
They're the only country in the world that could scale up battery production large enough to meet the demands of a worldwide move to EVs. And they're thinking of it in a very long-term strategy. Um, I'm going to be actually writing a paper for the United States Department of Energy that's going to be pointing a little bit more towards what, or suggesting, who knows if they will listen, but I have filed my credentials, and I'm hoping that the U.S. Department of Energy and the Department of Transportation start looking the same way and start thinking the same way, because the the U.S. and EU are just, they're way behind in making the transition to EVs, and it has a lot to do with power. And you and I will be speaking more about that in the future when we take a deep dive into it very soon.
Right. And I agree. Eventually, when EVs become more popularized out here, which where I live, there are a lot of EVs, but I understand majority of the country is not like that. There will be more battery transparency standards as far as supply chains when that does become a thing. Now, I think that battery transparency regulation or requirement, that could be both a positive and negative for NIO. It doesn't have to be either or, but I think that on the one hand, if NIO is required to tell people where they're getting their batteries from, people can have more confidence knowing that the battery in NIO is going to be a really good battery if it's supplied by CATL, who's a top battery manufacturer,
Or we line, and Neil has some other
or,
manufacturers
or
too.
Reline and other manufacturers. However, if a vehicle that's not even a NIO is involved in a battery fire, but they see that the battery came from CATL, I feel like that could have a negative implication. I don't want this vehicle because it has a battery that just got caught in a fire.
That's an informed buyer is going to know that. But I'm
An
going to
informed buyer.
take a second while we're talking about Chinese batteries and Chinese EVs and everything. I want to point something out to everybody.
Oh, it's not showing with your background. What is it? Car and driver, EV of the year.
Yeah,
That is
it's
Honda.
not. It's not a U.S. product, and it's not a Chinese product. It happens to be. It happens to be. It happens to be. I believe it's a Hyundai.
Mhm.
So we're not the only people in the game. We got to keep in mind that these guys are out. These guys are out there too. So
Seeing a
just
lot of
saying.
them on the road. When I had to travel to New Mexico for a business trip, I actually rented one of those, and the drive was pretty smooth, honestly. But I would say the mileage wasn't really up to the range wasn't really up to par with what we see in like a Neo, though.
No, well, I will tell you something. I've seen these cars. I've been when I was out test driving a Neo in June. I actually originally rented one of these, and it's a pretty good car.
It's a
It's
good car.
not a Neo,
Yeah.
but it's a good. I just again, there's an ass for every seat. Never
Mhm.
forget that.
I like that.
You
That's a good.
know, they will have their following, and they have a great, and who knows, someday they could be swapping batteries too.
Mhm. So, this week's news too, especially around tariffs, and regulations around letting in exports. We saw that the UK has a pretty welcoming stance on Chinese EVs. What are your thoughts on this in comparison to the US and Canada just announcing that they're pretty much going to have a 100% tariff hike on Chinese EVs as well? It's
I
kind of,
thought they were smarter than that up in Canada, but again, it's they want to get the same results that England is getting, and that Italy. We've spoken about this before. Italy is ready to take in one of the one of the eco boxes you did not mention earlier is Leap Motors. You know, so Leap Motors is going to be manufactured in. It's probably going to be manufactured in Italy eventually. It is part of the their largest group there, and they have permission. They have permission from China to manufacture it offshore. The Prime Minister of Italy has gone to China, tell them that they're welcome to come into Italy. Of course, Turkey has welcomed them in as well. So going to England. You just mentioned about England. In England, it's in every country. It's a matter of money. England was losing famous brands like Lotus, MG, and the Chinese came in and invested in it, and they're gonna build them there. The parts probably gonna be made in China, but Lotus and MG are both owned by Geely. Geely actually loaned money from NIO Capital to buy Lotus. So there's a good chance that Lotus has battery swapping in the future. I don't know much about MG yet, haven't looked into it much. We know about 47. We've spoken about that at times. 47 is all in on NIO, all in the fact that they're actually licensing NIO technology.
and
So
when
there's
you
a very
look,
good chance that's going to be a swappable. NIO also just opened the website for the UAE, and Envo is more than likely destined to go to the UAE. Probably the entire NIO line is probably going to the UAE. So
let's stick on
what is
47 for a second. When you look at 47, how that entire deal came about, how CYVN acquired a 20.1% stake in NIO. What people got have to understand is there are a lot of factors and a lot of consideration that goes into making a huge investment like that.
yes,
So I believe one of those factors or considerations was that the UK is going to have a welcoming stance on Chinese EVs. They're going to accept them with open arms. If that wasn't the case, I don't think that CYVN would be making that investment in NIO, having 47 do the licensing deal with NIO as well. So that's very important. That's very crucial.
they
But
could be
outside,
an export.
Mhm.
They could see that their arrangements could very well be that those neo-like cars we have EVs, we have not seen them yet, but they can be on their way to UAE
Yes,
with Europe's blessings,
yes.
because every country needs to import export. This automotive industry since forever has been a global effort.
Yes. And then kind of with Canada taking the same approach that the US is taking, interestingly enough, if you look at the numbers, it's not really affecting Chinese EVs at this point in time. Chinese EVs in Canada make up 1.3% of the entire
Right.
auto market. But ironically, who is it affecting? It's affecting Tesla because most of the vehicles manufactured in their a lot of not most a lot of the vehicles manufactured in their Shanghai factory are exported to Canada, so those vehicles are going to get tariffed more
Good
than
point.
a lot of other
Uh,
people.
so one of the reasons that Tesla recently announced they were not going to immediately go to their low cost unit is because the US threw a monkey wrench into the works. The idea was to make that lower cost unit in China, get it over here, because I just came back. I was in front of Tesla a month ago. Okay. It's I've got zero against Tesla. It is a fantastic product. Okay. It put EVs on the map. But the cost of living around, and even if they move down to Texas, the cost of living will never justify a car that's an EV that's that low cost. The only way it's going to work right now is where there is lots of scale to build a car, lots of low cost labor, not even low cost, just reasonably cost labor. So you were talking about Canada before. Let's go up to Canada for a second. Nobody in the United States complains that probably the U.S. car that they're driving was made in Canada. So if you I know they're NAFTA member and they are good neighbors and all that, but that's a fact. That's a fact. Those cars are not being manufactured in the U.S. Many cars, the car I drive was made in Ontario, with a U.S. nameplate on it. So that this tariff thing to me is just a good reason to get the Chinese, and not only the Chinese, lots of Asia. You have VFast in Vietnam was all ready to bring a plant over here, and they slowed down a little because they ran into the headwinds that are inevitable, right? So you know, again, it's global. It is a global undertaking.
Hmm. Yeah,
You can't bite your nose to spite your face.
exactly. And some people say that whatever Tesla, you really just addressed this point, but some people say that, okay, whatever, Tesla can't export cars from Shanghai to Canada without being tariffed. Tesla has manufacturing in the US, which is closer. Why don't they just switch it up that way? If Tesla were to start moving the cars that they have over here, exporting them into Canada, the manufacturing is way more costly over here. That's the whole reason why they're bringing cars from Shanghai to Canada to get cheaper manufacturing. It's not as
That's going to
simple.
change in time. Oh, just so you know, China's middle class is growing just the way the Japanese middle class grew. And the whole world is a lot smarter than it was in 1965. And internet and cell phones make the difference. It's getting harder and harder. You cannot go and find, people that are okay with just living,
Yeah,
just existing,
yeah.
and working hard, even in
And
the USA.
especially after the pandemic, a lot of
Right.
people are not settling
Yeah.
for these poorer, and not poor, that's very harsh to say. I don't know how to say it in a
No,
different.
it's why Chinese can afford the China, the by and large, you know, Chinese has a huge growing middle class, and they can afford the same things that they used to build for everyone else and not have for themselves. They're consumers now. They have great malls. They have their showrooms are freaking awesome. I mean, the one that Mr. P was just in, it was a moderate showroom, and it's nicer looking than probably most showrooms you're going to find in your town right now. Is awesome for the Anbang. So again, we have class structures changing, technology changing, communications changing. All of these things are changing, and everything's going to come out in the wash.
So we covered a lot. I have one more question for you here, and I'll just read this off to you. Um, okay, so with the rising insurance costs for gas-powered vehicles in the Chinese market, this is something that was revealed last week as well, and I discussed it on my podcast. How do you think that it's going to impact the broader electric vehicle market, and what impact do you think that it'll have on NIO, and how can battery swapping play into this?
Well, to be honest, I don't know a lot about it. So again, I don't. I mean,
But let me
it
tell you,
appears
let
to
me
me.
tell
It
you about
appears to me as another what you said, another intelligent move by the Asian Chinese government to let people know that they're watching. So this is, that's their way of doing it. I don't know enough about it.
So let me
Um,
tell you about it.
we swap it over here, though. You swap it over here because here a gas car is going to cost you a lot less to insure dollar for dollar than an electric car because of the
It's the
battery,
same way.
because of the
It's the same way.
repairs.
So let me explain the issue.
Okay.
So insurance companies, traditional insurance companies out of China, they're realizing that so many people are buying electric vehicles right now. And when an electric vehicle files a claim or gets in an accident, it's so much more expensive to take
Correct.
care of or service that claim than it is for a traditional ICE vehicle. And so what they're doing is these companies are actually losing a lot of money on insurance when it comes to electric vehicles. So they're increasing the cost of ICE vehicle insurance to subsidize for that cost. So that's the issue.
I will tell you, I know my insurance is just ridiculous, and I have a believe it or not, a clean record. Um, so that's a good point.
And
I'm in agreement with that.
consumers
I don't
are
know. I don't know if it's. I think it has a little bit. I also think it has a little bit to do with the very large settlements insurance companies make in accidents. In some states, the settlements they're gigantic, and that might have something to do with the insurance rates. But we're getting a little off EVs.
my ex-girlfriend had a Tesla Model 3 and she left it outside in Texas during a hailstorm. And so she got dents in the roof of her car. She filed an insurance claim, and insurance told her just go buy a brand new car. And it was a brand new Tesla. These things are expensive to fix. They're complicated to fix. Everyone doesn't have the expertise to even work on a car like that. We're very short-staffed when it comes to finding people with that skill set. So that's why it's more expensive. But over time, the cost will go.
Well, again, the lessons learned from Tesla's experience at Hertz and at Six were very negative because fixed batteries, every one of those cars had to be manually put to a charger, stay in a charger. It ties that charger up people say I could charge it there. A rental car company or a taxi company or anyone is using, they're going to charge the batteries at least to 80%. They're not going to send that car out on the road. So that was an issue. The other thing was repairs. They'll come down as more cars are made. But if you live in some place where, where there's where Tesla parts have to come in from California, and you live on the East Coast, and you need the parts you're saying, the hail parts. Let's just say the roof is damaged, and you need that entire section. I don't know. I mean, it's probably unibody construction, but to get those parts, the quarter panels, the parts are expensive. The battery is phenomenal, 1,300 pounds, and anywhere from 15 to 25,000 on all of them. So they're positives for NIO, and I'm thinking that Tesla's going to. We'll talk about it, but we'll see what happens.
And we
Again,
know
I don't want to say too
that
much, but I'm pretty sure I know what's coming.
and NIO's been actually foreshadowing this kind of insurance apocalypse, if that's what we're going to call it. They've been working on their own insurance unit with
Oh, they
specific
have it.
products, yeah, tailored to EV owners, kind of like Tesla in America has Tesla insurance. So NIO's kind of doing the same thing. They're making insurance that's going to be more affordable than, like, let's say, I know Geico's probably not in China, but like a Geico or a Allstate of
Yeah,
China. So NIO,
yeah. What they're doing is they're gonna offer the insurance. And they are. I believe this is already in place. Okay, they're probably offering the insurance at no profit to NIO. Okay, in other words, the underwriter is taking the risk. Uh, NIO's not marking it up, and also they're probably totally informing the underwriters what the actual replacement costs are, and they're probably providing those parts at cost. So there's a lot of ways you can get insurance down. But if you're talking about insurance from a company, that promotes 25 golf outings a year and tremendous commissions for their agents, that's what drives. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, but that's part of what American insurance is all about. You're paying for somebody to go play golf in Hawaii.
these are publicly traded companies. Their job is to grow every year, every quarter.
Right.
To return value to shareholders. And here's a good classic business philosophy, personal finance philosophy that just stands the test of time. When you want to get a good deal, you go to someone that's making a quality product, but they're just vying for market share. So if you think about this in the case, I don't want to say this because it's too close to my job, but there might be a huge manufacturer that everybody knows and loves, but there's this new guy on the block who says, hey, our product might be just as good or equal to their product.
Or better.
Don't even want to, or better, and we don't even want to make that much money on it. We just want your business. So that's
what you call buying market share. But that's a common business practice since before history. I mean,
Exactly.
that's how you get, how you first you go after market share and then you go after profit. You want
Exactly.
repeat business, you want you don't get them the first time, you get them the second time, but it's good business. It's how business is conducted. Hey,
Exactly.
Obi, would you like to talk a little bit? Would you like to talk a little bit about uh where the recent NIO just hit their 25,000 um swapping station, and we see they have now at least 13 partners that aren't going to battery swapping tomorrow, but they're going to battery swapping. What do you think about that?
Yeah, you know what? It's a great milestone for NIO. They're continuing to show that it's not just about having the best product. Because if you look at like Xpeng when it comes to intelligent driving, they've got the some of the most data out of the three companies, which we call Li, NIO, Li Auto, and Xpeng. Those all make up Li. If you look at Xpeng, their sales haven't been that good recently. They're actually tanking behind NIO. So instead of just having the best product, it's also about having a connected ecosystem of services and things that you can offer
Correct.
to your customer to
Correct.
be able to improve upon customer satisfaction and really drive customer loyalty. That's all what NIO is about. And they're showing us that through NIO housing, having infrastructure for their customers, having battery swapping stations, making the refueling options a lot easier for their customers, taking away one of the biggest pain points, which is range anxiety, and ultimately just having a good service network as well. So I think,
And also to deal actually the NIO houses, that's the other thing on the distribution side. NIO has thought this out ahead of time, and I think they're way ahead of everybody for distribution points for actually selling the vehicles. So, but on the battery side, so I have a little something to throw in to what you just said. Again, NIO hit its 25,000 swapping center. That NIO also said, I believe it's in Shanghai. They are building a new battery swapping manufacturing center to build more. And just as of today, this is if you haven't heard this yet, CATL just announced this morning in China, or this recently in China, that they're adding 1,000 stations. I think they're doing it next year, and they've already had feedback from Shenfei, who's NIO's power manager, who welcomed it. So now you're talking 3,500. And again, as I've said to you in past episodes, um, the Chinese don't. The Chinese are going to build this out, whether or not the Americans and the Europeans get behind them. And again, my Marty says the Americans and the Europeans are going to be singing the swapping song probably by 2026. They're going to realize it's the way to go. We'll see, we'll see if any other big guys follow it. But there's no doubt that when the largest battery manufacturer in the world says, by the way, they've had easy go. CATL and NIO have been partners since 2016. They've had a battery management company that foresaw all of this. They foresaw all of this in 2016. They formed Miratary, and that is a battery management company, not a battery builder. They're a company that says that battery's old, it needs to be replaced. How do we recycle? How do we market? How do we ship? How do we charge? How do we swap? They've looked at this for almost 8 years now.
mhm,
So, cattle, CATL is the largest manufacturer. They believe in swapping. That should tell everyone who's in the market, every battery buyer in the world
big
where
news.
things are going.
At this point, if you don't believe in battery swapping, you're just failing to see it. For anybody out there who is still
There's
doubting.
economics to it, though.
Yeah, that's
There's
I'm
economics.
getting to it
Building a vehicle with
because
swapping.
because
Go ahead.
not
Go ahead.
only are is battery swapping helping out people who own NIOs or even EV owners in general. NIO's battery swapping stations, the government said this, are also helping to regulate the power grid. So they're not just making electric vehicle owners' lives better, they're making everyone's lives better. And when the government sees something like that, they're going to pour more money into it. We've got people on the corporate side like CATL, they're voting with their dollars. We've got consumers voting with their dollars on battery
Yeah,
swapping stations. So this is something that's very viable. It could be it's supposed to be a $2 billion market by 2025. That's next.
right.
NIO's the biggest battery swapping player in the game. So they're poised to take most of the share and they have market share there and
But
they have most of the patents. Everybody else's patents are.
the reason most manufacturers have fixed batteries and aren't jumping on the battery swapping bandwagon is the reason that the trolls all punish NIO. Okay. NIO's not profitable. NIO's not profitable because they went out and built the infrastructure. They paid up front. Okay. Their competitors have an easier entry now because NIO already has those stations out in China at least. So the reason you're not seeing the entire industry picking up swapping batteries yet is you look around in North America and nobody jumped in. Soon as one company, two companies say they're going to start going, okay, you're going to that, and you'll probably start seeing the Chinese EVs coming in at the same time. The Chinese are probably putting up the money to get swapping going. And who's going to join? I have a pretty good idea who it's going to be, but it'll happen. But if you're buying an EV tomorrow, and chances are it's going to have a fixed battery and all the issues that come with a fixed battery, but the lower cost for the manufacturer. Again, one more thing I want to point out about battery swapping. You don't have to buy the battery. So you're getting a lot more car for your money. And
Mhm,
that is a really strong, you've made some very good points there. But that's a point when I want to buy an upscale NIO, I'm not paying for that. The battery is typically the most expensive part of the
mhm,
vehicle. But again, NIO is paying up front. They have to probably create 1.5 batteries for every car that they sell, right? Because you have to have so many batteries sitting in the swap station. So, but the swap station is pretty incredible when you think about it. It actually, the customer, the buyer, the driver brings the product back to you, delivers it back to you, and you charge it, and then you rent it back to them. The business model is so awesome that it's remarkable. And also when that battery is at the end of life cycle, that's what Morattery is. That's what CATL and NIO want to do. They want to have control of that casing, so they get it back, get themselves out, recycle it. Almost everything that's in a battery. I'm not a battery. I'm not a chemist, but I'm pretty sure that most of those items, including the casing, are recyclable. So that's going to be that. There's a cottage industry right there for entrepreneurs to get into recycling, not only energy generation, but also recycling and rebuilding the batteries. And there's some companies in the U.S., by the way, who do service Tesla batteries that have been damaged. They're specialists in it. They replace it, just sell at a time, and so that's a cottage industry too. Not a lot of them, but the ones that do it, it's got to be a great business.
So, yeah, battery as a service, great thing. So, Marty, when you walk into a car dealership with the intention of buying a car and you talk to a car salesman, what is that guy going to ask you? How, uh, how much can you pay
Right.
per month? So with battery as a service, that's obviously going to lower the monthly cost of buying an electric vehicle. So when you go back to like the insurance conversation that we just had, people are ultimately looking at their car as a monthly expense. They're adding in like their insurance, they're adding in their car payment. So if the cost of electric vehicles insurance is typically higher, people can use battery as a service to kind of subsidize that extra cost
Right.
for
That's
an
absolutely correct.
and still
Again,
have a nice TCO.
yeah. I mean it's the business model works perfectly after you have the infrastructure in place. And of course, the battery swapping apparatus that's in a vehicle, that does add cost to the initial vehicle, to build the initial vehicle. But again, that cost, NIO is now saying that their costs on Envo are descending because of how many times they've already done it and how automated they've made that process. So, but a company that hasn't had any battery swapping experience yet, again, they have to make an initial investment to get it going. But when you have, we were talking about Lotus and MG before, they have Geely behind them, and Geely is also behind the Polestars that are they are being imported into the U.S. right now, and will be manufactured alongside with Volvos in the U.S. in due course.
That's why
So
I say Chinese cars.
these guys are chipping away at the code. They will crack the code.
Yes. Yep. That's why I say Chinese cars are already in America. Look at Polestar. People
Yeah.
don't know that.
Polestar is, by the way, Polestar is an under $40,000 vehicle. So that gets it right into the sweet spot for the USA. Has its issues. We know it has its issues. Again, it has some of the best engineers in the business from Geely working on those issues. And again, most people don't know Geely also the president of Geely. He's the largest shareholder in Mercedes. So he could more than likely get those cars manufactured in Germany too. I'm not an expert on the EU, but this is why people are doing things internationally.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I would just say that I think we covered everything pretty well.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
we could hold back some stuff, or we can hold for our next conversation. I'm looking forward to doing another episode with you soon. I'll be doing the research, and hopefully be able to tell your audience something they haven't heard before they watch our episodes.
Thank you, Marty. Yeah, great conversation. Definitely valued your insight and your thoughts on these things. And I think the rest of the audience does as well. And I'm part of
All right.
I'm
Wishing you and everyone a great day, great week. We'll speak with you soon.
Happy Labor Day.
Take care.